Hello, everyone, and welcome to Social Innovation and Social Enterprise in the Food System. My name is Josh Smee. I'm the CEO here at Food First NL, and I'm here to introduce our speakers and to set a bit of a stage for this conversation and for why we think it's really important to be having this conversation right now. Forgive us first for not capturing the first 10 minutes or so of the panel discussion. But we really had such a rich discussion. We wanted to share the rest of it with everyone. And so we're adding this back in and putting it back out in the world. I think we'll start first with a little bit of context about what we're doing. This is part of a broad set of activities under the heading of the St. John's Food Assessment, which is a really exciting project that's been on the go under the leadership of Sarah Crocker and leading a team of food animators across the city to map out our local food systems here in St. John's, where I am as well, and understand where the gaps are and where some of the opportunities are to fill those gaps. And the conversation around social enterprise and social innovation is really about opportunities and filling gaps. And we really want to make it clear that we think the food system is a place of incredible opportunity in the coming years for folks who are interested in developing new social enterprises or taking a social innovation lens on their work. And so that's the kind of broad spirit we come into this. More generally, the food assessment aims to bring together leaders who are addressing a real range of food systems issues. So we're hearing about every part of the food system, from grocery stores to emergency food programs to gardens to everything in between locally in St. John's. And so I also want to point out that this is a really wide-ranging conversation here around where social enterprise and social innovation can fit in. But we know that those issues are complex and the solutions are complicated, and we do think that there are some places where these kind of models are going to be the best ones. And we also know that the food system is already a site for some really exciting social innovation in this province. It's one of the most fertile grounds for new social innovations to be seeded on. And I'll talk for a minute about a few of them, because I think I want to highlight some of the great work that's already happening. And this includes projects all over the province. So things like Smart Ice, which facilitates travel on the ice safely under changing climate conditions in Nunavut. And of course, travel on the ice is a key ingredient in access to wild foods, which are such an important part of our northern food systems. Also in Labrador, we have the Pie Center for Northern Boreal Food Systems emerging as a hub for community-led, northern-focused food systems research and agricultural innovation on the old pie farm in Goose Bay. We have on the west coast of the island one of our projects, the Western Food Hub, based around Corner Brook in the Bay of Islands, that's building a new model, adapting one from Cape Breton for online access to local primary and secondary products. And then there are a number of app-based or kind of online solutions that are coming up. We have the Fish Market app, which is just getting going, looking to figure out how to connect people better with products from local fishers. There's, of course, the Guide to the Good, which is itself a social enterprise, a website that promotes many green and sustainable businesses, including many in the food system. The Association for New Canadians has been doing loads, everything from the Global Eats food truck to a new Cook to Connect training program in partnership with the farmers market, and I think Pam from the market's on the call, and we'll share a bit from that now. Island Rooms in Petty Harbor is promoting and preserving access to sustainable fisheries. We have a couple of app-based solutions working on food waste, things like Second Harvest, working on figuring out how to get food waste out of grocery stores into better uses. This is already a rich ecosystem, but we know from our position at Food First, hearing a lot about the gaps in our food systems, that there's still a ton of space for social enterprise and for social innovation to build trust, to align partners, to develop innovative solutions. And so this conversation is meant to get your head into that space a little bit, and maybe into participating in an event we have upcoming, a social innovation Kickstarter coming in early May. Sarah Crocker will have more to say about that towards the end of this talk. But that will be a pitch competition, 2-minute pitches for great ideas around social innovation, social enterprise in the food system. There'll be cash prizes as well as mentorship and idea development support. So we really encourage people to join in and apply for that. And maybe you'll hear something in today's call that that gets your mind going, gets the wheels turning, and gets you into that Kickstarter. We hope you do. So to help move that conversation along, the rest of today we're going to spend with 3 really thoughtful and wonderful panelists who come from different corners of social enterprise and social innovation in our food systems. And I'll introduce them first. We have Pam Anstey. She's the executive director of the St. John's Farmers Market Cooperative. They obviously operate the St. John's Farmers Market at the community market here in St. John's. They have a wide range of programs and supports that they provide, and particularly in recent months and years, towards the development of a cultural food ecosystem and figuring out gaps in access to culturally specific foods in St. John's. We also have Emily Bland on the call. Emily's a social entrepreneur and CDO at SucSeed, which many of you know, producing hydroponic vegetable growing kits. She's also involved with Smiling Land Farm in Witless Bay. And finally, we have Viviana Ramírez Luna. She's the founder of Planeet Consulting.
And I think is a really good place for a lot of the, food systems work that needs to be done, that is being done, because there's not a whole lot of profit in this whole thing, but there is sustainability in this whole thing. And I think, if the market has taught us anything, is that there are a lot of small businesses that are willing and able to contribute in a community way to an economic way. And so those two blend together really quite well in a social enterprise kind of model. Why now? The world, everything changed as of March 2020. And well, it changed before that because, Snowmageddon really showed us how vulnerable we were and how we could be shut down so completely. I still, think about the 2-hour lineups when the grocery stores started opening again after Snowmageddon, and how important that is for our sustainability. So we are very reliant on external forces. And the more we can become reliant on internal resources, the less risk there is for the entire population in that way. And so, if Snowmageddon started it, the pandemic certainly emphasized it, and just how precarious a lot of our commercial food systems and social safety nets and things like that really are. And so why now? Yeah, because we need to, because we've finally gotten the global, or at least provincial, wake-up call of how vulnerable we really are. And so a lot of us have been fighting for the same things that we're fighting for now for a long time, but now there's just so much more cohesiveness and collaboration, and a lot of stuff is happening, and it's really exciting.
Viviana, how about you? What drew you into thinking about food systems and applying the kind of approaches that you're taking? What's exciting about that work?
My zero waste approach, which I learned about in 2017, and I just became obsessed about it. It was like, how is that the world is not going zero waste? How is not everybody knows about this? So that's how I got into this. And then into the social enterprise, I'm very new as well. I've been driven by this environmental mission, reducing waste. And then as more I learned was like, there's a lot of social and economic connections to it. What I'm getting into now, so I have Planeet Consulting. It's consulting firm I created in 2019. And through that and through my work with the Social Justice Cup, I came to connect with a lot of people, and we started figuring out, okay, how we reduce waste in St. John's. Then a year ago, with a group of people, we said, well, let's start with compost. But initially, it was like this huge, it felt like a huge task, because it was like, to do that, maybe the city needs to build a facility, or the province of the province. And then shortly after that, I learned about community composting, which is the project that we're moving. And it just made sense. It was like, this is it. And the more I learned, the more it made sense, because I learned how community composting as a social enterprise can create jobs, and they should be well paid. I have problems with this divide between profit and mission. Like, they have to go together. Like, there's like, why it couldn't be profit when you're pursuing your mission? And so with this, the community composting, we started a pilot project in downtown with the support of Stella Circle. We're hiring someone who's going to take care of the composting process, because that's a lot of work. And the vision is that we have these programs across the city collecting organics from residents and businesses, and that, you know, different neighbors who will have groups that will benefit economically from this program that is also bringing environmental benefits with the waste reduction, social connections, because it's people, you know, in this project, if let's say the city starts a program, probably it's going to be taxes, and we don't like hearing about taxes. But maybe we start at the community level, the neighborhood level. It's like, you're paying for this, but you're paying people in your community. So maybe people will be also more willing to pay for those things and see what's happening with the organics and what it's turning into. There's also, no, I think I'm gonna get too far now, but the more I learn, the more it makes sense. Like, this is a way community-based that will bring benefits to everyone, and that it should be paid, it should be well paid. So marketing, finances, business planning, which with Planeet Consulting I'm also going through, has to be a key part of how we can make community composting viable social enterprises in St. John's or the province.
I'd like to keep working on this theme for a second, because I think this is interesting. Viviana just described an area where she has seen an opportunity to make a business model work, that there was a gap and it's being filled. And I'm curious, because Emily and Pam, you both have eyes on a lot of food-based activity. Where do you think, I'm curious if there's any opportunities that are rising to top of mind, like sort of gaps that are not being filled, or places where you think there might be some opportunity for similar things to happen, whether that is, and again, right now I'm not really drawing a hard line, just as Viviana said, between for-profit and non-profit here. I think that's maybe a follow-up here, but yeah, where do you see the areas of opportunity for these kind of business models right now?
Emily, do you want to go first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. There's four actually that come to mind. So the first one being on the production standpoint, despite Newfoundland, I think what we're known for is having some kind of more harsh weather or harsher land growing. There's actually a lot of really great medicinal or health berries that grow here and grow really well. Like, you look at partridge berries. There's so much opportunity for us to do something with the soil and resources that we do have here from a production standpoint. You look at saltwater lamb, there's lots of opportunities for us to do more of it. We just need more people in the sector actively doing it and actively working in it. Secondary processing, there's huge amounts of opportunities here. We have so many buildings right now that, whether it was from fish plants or it was a rubber boot factory at one point, there's so much available space here and infrastructure that's waiting for someone to come and do something. On the technology side, there's so much for us to learn around precision agriculture, even accounting systems for farms. We're one of the only sectors, or one of the largest sectors in the agricultural sector, that doesn't actually have accounting systems that are specifically for us, which is ludicrous in my opinion. But and then the fourth opportunity that I've really seen a lot is in the organics market. So organic sales last year alone have gone up 30%, but production hasn't gone up. So to use the resources that we have here in Newfoundland, there's so much opportunity for us across the sector.
And I'm just going to tag on to what Emily just said, because I'm gonna take two hats here for a second, because the first one is in terms of, say, the farmers market, the demand for fresh produce doesn't end when the season ends. And so we have people that are coming here going, well, where are all the vegetables? And where's the greens? And where's the microgreens? And where's the, all of the different things? And we're like, we would love to have more farmers here. We would love to have more primary producers here. We would love to have more. And the opportunity to be here and to have that instant connection to the marketplace without having to establish your own and all of those things is a really viable opportunity for really small agriculture, without having to try to figure out how to do all of the bits. So that's an opportunity that I think a lot of people are a little bit intimidated by. I mean, well, I don't have enough to come for the full season. You don't need to. We are always accepting primary producers here at the farmers market. But the other thing I want to talk about, and I think this is one thing that, we've been doing a lot of work on here, but Josh referenced the ANC earlier, and there's a lot of gap within the multicultural community. And I'm going to acknowledge first off, I'm not part of the multicultural community, and I feel really awkward every time I speak on behalf of this issue, because it feels like I am the wrong person to do this. That being said, it is a project that is happening through the farmers market and has just concluded. Excuse me. It's called At Home in the Kitchen. And in 2019 into 2020, we did a whole lot of research on where cultural ingredient gaps were in this city. And recognizing that for newcomers to the city, food is an enormous sense of place. And so if you go somewhere and you feel that you can get the same things that taste like home, that feel like home, that smell like home, it can become a little more of home. And so we wanted to be able to explore that a little bit more. And so we got a whole bunch of glorious data on it, talking with many different cultural communities, and got lots of raw data on very specific things of what was available, what wasn't available, what places you could get things from, and things like that, and how people were accessing cultural ingredients that were just not available here in Newfoundland. And so in fast forward a few months, and we've recently completed an analysis of all of that data. And what we've come up with is actually a small business brief, 4 different small business briefs that we're going to be doing a launch and a glorious webinar just like this sometime in mid-May. So I invite you all back again when that comes out, to learn about what those business opportunities that we kind of sussed out of the data of what could be a small business social enterprise opportunity based on this glorious information that all of these folks so generously gave. And so what we're going to be doing is putting it back out into the world. And so then you have the start of these 4 different business opportunities and social enterprise opportunities that will then could formulate the basis for individuals, organizations, collectives, whatever, to be able to take that and really fill that gap and that need that has been very clearly identified, and to create something out of it that isn't here, but also to create a business opportunity for themselves or the organization. So that's coming, and that's super exciting. I think the other side of the multicultural community piece, and I really wish Amir Algaza was here today, because the ANC is doing a fantastic program coming up very soon, and they're partnering with us in our facilities to do a cooking program and a training program for newcomers to Canada, and certainly newcomers to Newfoundland, to learn commercial cooking and commercial production and things like that. And then on the second half of that program, they're going to be doing a social enterprise based on the skills that they've learned. And so it's really exciting to see the enterprise and the fulfillment of needs within the city on both sides, the demand and the resource side. And that's kind of coming together very collaboratively with a whole lot of input from a whole lot of community partners. So there's lots of exciting things happening. And there's a lot of demand, and I think there's a lot of space for even more to grow. I mean, what we're talking about is only just the beginning, really.
One thing, so this big list of opportunities makes me think, and I want to follow up on something from earlier, is how we choose the structure that we use to pursue them. So you three all come from organizations that have different kind of governance structures and histories. And I'm curious, like, this is a bit of a nerdy question, but I think people might find it interesting. Just how is your organization organized? Like, how are you behind the scenes? What does it look like? Who's doing the work? Is it a for-profit or a non-for-profit? Who runs it? I think like one of the interesting things about the social innovation conversation is that there's an open space also for innovation structurally. And so I think folks on this call might be interested just to hear how your organizations are organized. Maybe Viviana, can I go to you first on that?
Sure. So I'm in a very weird position or situation. So the community composting project, we submitted as social justice cooperative, and what I'm thinking is it's going to be like a seed. We're going to have this pilot project. We got funding to pay this person, and we hope it will continue. But the community composting itself, I want to see it as its own entity that can be adopted and replicated by other organizations with our support. As it grows, we'll need to coordinate, we'll need to set up some sort of network or a lot of work with the city of St. John's, where I'm also hoping to be part of, right? Growing this, learning from the different experiences. There's already another community project by the French Community Center. Island Compost is a commercial operation, but it's small scale, it's collecting from residents, it's learning a lot about how residents are doing it, the problems with contamination and things like that. So I see it as, it's gonna require its own business development, business plan, which also I'm learning with Planeet Consulting. And hope to contribute to that as well. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think it highlights the complexity of some of these decisions. Is not just around what problem you're trying to solve, but like what structures we're putting in place and how those structures change as our projects become more advanced. I think that's maybe one thing I would pull out of that, is just that if there are folks on the call who have a problem that they want to solve, they don't necessarily have to get to their end state immediately in terms of structure.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, and maybe I'll go to Emily and then to Pam to tell us a little bit kind of structurally, what does it look like behind the scenes for you, Emily, first?
So we've been a weird one. It's been 5 years that we've been doing this. So when SucSeed initially started, we were a student volunteer project under the Enactus Memorial brand. So under there, we just operated as a volunteer organization. We're set up as a not-for-profit, and things worked well there. However, once you pass $30,000 in revenue, you're required to charge taxes and kind of have more of a formal setup. So when we reached that point with Enactus, we realized, okay, we need to set this up as a structure. So since the beginning of SucSeed, our mission was never ever to make money. It was, we want to empower people to grow fresh food and make it accessible and make it affordable. So for us, we wanted to incorporate it as a not-for-profit. Around that time that we were incorporating, so late 2016, they actually made it a little bit more strict around not-for-profit registration and being revenue generating. So you have to make sure that however you're generating money is very aligned with your mission. So for us, initially, we thought it would be. We were partnered with Choices for Youth, an incredible organization locally, where I initially met Josh. Oh no, Josh came afterwards. But so started working with Choices for Youth. So we were partnering with Choices in order to employ at-risk youth from the community in order to do the productions of our gardens. So to us, like, that's a very social mission. However, when CRA looked at our financials, we paid Choices for Youth kind of a contractor's fee, and we didn't actually pay the youth directly because that's how it worked better for us to be set up at the time. So we were actually denied to be set up as a not-for-profit, and we were quite upset about it. So we didn't want to be looked at as a for-profit, which sometimes gets looked at into a negative light in the social space. We wanted to have something that was really for the community, by the community. So we did have to register as a for-profit, but put into our founding documents that the money that we generate goes back into the community. It goes to donating our gardens to places. It goes to helping community initiatives and doesn't go back into the hands of investors. It really is for the community. And then we started the process about 2.5 years ago now, as hoping to get certified as a B Corp. So it's a certification for-profit companies that they audit everything that you do to show that you truly are doing this for the community, by the community. You're not doing anything negative from an environmental standpoint, from a social standpoint, or a financial standpoint. So we've been going through that audit, getting close, but so we're going the B Corp certification process, which is kind of an add-on to if you have to register as a for-profit company.
And that's a really interesting example, because the B Corp process is a voluntary certification. And one thing we don't have in this province that a few other provinces do is some provinces have a hybrid corporate structure. In between for-profit and not-for-profit, there's a third option for a social purpose organization. So Nova Scotia has it, BC, but we don't. And so it's interesting to see you folks pursue the B Corp certification as something that like community certification for that. And then Pam, maybe I think it'd be interesting for you to tell folks about how the Farmers Market Cooperative is organized, because that's another way of approaching sort of creating a structure to meet a food system problem.
And it does, in a lot of ways, bridge the gap between social purpose and business. So just a little bit of backstory. I mean, the St. John's Farmers Market has been around for about 12, pushing 13 years now. And if anybody knows us from back in the day, we were, on a Saturday, we would set up our tents, vendors would sell their things, we would organize and arrange it and book the vendors, and any of the fees basically went to just maintain the actual organization itself. In 2018, we moved into the old St. John's Metrobus Depot, and the entire world changed for us because it became a very different type of organization in operations, because we had our own space then, and we could branch out and do a lot of different things that we couldn't do before, and it complicated things in a lot of ways, because as opposed to only being the streamlined, awesome St. John's Farmers Market that we were, now we were community space, a community hub. We wanted to have that presence within the community and felt that social responsibility to maintain that. So our organization is set up as a cooperative, and basically what that means is all of our members are shareholders in the cooperative. We are divided in our membership between consumer members. So anybody can be a consumer member if you're a customer, if you're a supporter, if you're a friend of the market. And we also have half of our organization is vendors. And that includes our board. Our board is half and half consumers and vendors. And what that gives us is two different perspectives on what our presence and what our place and what our direction should be. I think one of the things about cooperatives, though, is a lot of times people see cooperatives as, collective purchasing, the farm cooperatives where they're buying farm stuff and things like that. And it's not a shareholder profit thing. We are a social good cooperative. We have no expectation, and it is built into our very corporation bylaws and our constitution, that shareholders do not actually get profit. What they get is an awesome warm fuzzy feeling that they are supporting the community, and all of the profit per se that we raise goes right back into redeveloping, further developing, expanding the organization so that we can do more community good, more community work, more market work, more enterprise work. So we're a registered nonprofit, so we do have that status. We're also a registered cooperative. And so blending those dual lines, we get to be able to be a nonprofit organization that supports, well, right now we have over 170 small business and entrepreneurs under our umbrella. So we're a nonprofit supporting business, but supporting sustainable business, local business, small business, and supporting social enterprise. So we're, don't want to echo everybody and say that we're weird too, but it's there's three very different models of operation, and each one of them is a really good opportunity to be able to walk that line and to make that balance between enterprise and social good.
Pam, you and Emily and Viviana are all bringing me back to like early conversations. I was on the board of the farmers market for a long time, and I remember when we crossed that HST threshold once upon a time in the past. So it's definitely, that is like one of the moments when things get serious when you're in this work, right? And I do think it's really interesting to hear you folks kind of hash out just how diverse the governance models are here. And I just one more question on this, because I think some of this is interesting, is where did you go for, or where have you gone for support or for help in kind of thinking through decision making? Because that's the other part of the kind of social innovation landscape is support. So I would be curious if you folks, if you've relied on or talked to others in this kind of ecosystem to guide you through it. Maybe I'll start with Emily on this one.
For sure. For me, rule number one is take action, get yourself going, and you'll find those right people around you who will come on and be kind of helpers and supporters. In terms of finding advice, for us, the first place we knocked on the door of was the Genesis Center. So they have a great 8-week program that helps you flush through ideas. It gets you talking to customers, and a great organization to kind of get started with and figure out, is it an idea? How can you like start to make those next steps? And then for us, we very much went the incubator route. So WeDay has a WeScale accelerator where they help you work on your business model and connect you with customers and organizations and supporters. One of the most incredible things I've seen here locally is that people are willing to help, especially in the food space. It's so important to all of us, and it takes all of us coming together in order to make an impact. So I'd be willing to bet that 80% of the people that you ask for help, advice, or where to go through, whether it's entrepreneurs, it's people who have helped advise these types of organizations or companies as well. It's the farmers market. It could be the Genesis Center. Figure out what it is that you think you need to know and who could be in that space and reach out and ask. The worst thing that could ever happen is they say no, or they connect you with someone else that could be a better fit as well. But we're Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, and when you're on this island, we're all into this together.
And Pam, maybe over to you. I'm curious. I mean, the market is in a funny position because you provide some of this kind of support, but who do you reach out to lean on?
So just to flash back to the beginning, because I wasn't here right in the beginning, I was a customer then. But I mean, I know in the history of it, don't reinvent the wheel. I mean, reach out to people that are already doing this in other places and say, hey, what are you doing? How are you doing it? And we've found, and even now as we've grown and developed and expanded, doing that has been invaluable. Just copy and paste, really, because people have faced the same kind of puzzles and confusion before, and a lot of times they're very willing to support and very willing and eager to see other people and other businesses grow. And yes, so one of the things that we do is business incubation, and not only are we a space where small businesses can come and set up their shop and sell, but a lot of times we become far more than that in helping people navigate the systems of becoming that business. So we've done workshops in the past, we've worked one-on-one with people, and that can be especially rewarding and frustrating for brand new businesses that have ideas and don't know anything about how to present their ideas, how to develop their ideas. The tax thing, I mean, we've had people who are like, holy God, what and just not know, because how do you know? So being that kind of repository of all bits of information that we can certainly pass along on both a formal and an informal level has been super cool. And one of the things that we are really interested in developing more on a more, I guess, structured format. So that's certainly our forward-thinking view as to how we can do that and how we can be that, because there's a lot of people trying to navigate all of these bits and pieces, and somebody somewhere has all those answers. It might not all be in the same place, but somebody's got bits and pieces of each one of them.
And Viviana, how about you? Where did you look to for support and for guidance, or who are you looking to now as you sort of move and scale?
So from the business perspective, there we go again. As Emily, I also, when I found Planeet, actually I said, okay, this is official when I was going through the Genesis program with Memorial. So yes, it's an amazing program. Very quickly, I want to say that it looks like it's just for tech products or if you have a specific product, but they still accepted me, which is consulting services and nothing to do with technology. Not now, not yet. Anyways, so that's how it started to develop like the business mind. At the same time, and this was after I learned about zero waste, again, that I said, why learn this just now? I started my consulting firm, but I continued working with NGOs. I was with Zero Waste Canada, and then is when I got with social justice. And that was part of from Planeet, was like, I want to work with businesses because businesses have a lot of power to change. As a consumers, we do. We change businesses, we change regulations, right? When we come together and demand. But I also say, well, let's work with businesses and help them change as well. But I also want this community part to continue to be working this. So I've been marrying the two and using all the business skills I've been learning, plus be very present in all the social issues and environmental issues that we have. So it's been, specific institutions as Genesis and LOW, Newfoundland Labrador Organization for Women Entrepreneurs. Thank you, Sarah, for being here. And then as we started working on this community composting project, we had conversations with Ian Froud, Councillor of the City. Ended up with Stella Circle, which is very exciting, and it's adding that social employment part to the project. So it's been like all over the place, I think. But also, as Emily said, it's like get going. You have an idea, just email whoever you think, even if you don't know the person, just email and ask questions. Kim Tal from Guide to the Good was, the person that really helped me get into the environmental world in St. John's after I had been studying and working, but I didn't know a lot of people in the environmental world here. And I've been in St. John's for 11 years. The first 3, 4 were university and very small circles. But when I got in zero waste, that I felt like I needed to go wide. Just some emails. So a lot of people, and just Kim replied, just from her, it was like opening a lot of doors. And then learning about all the institutions that will help you move forward too.
And Viviana, you just teed up the kind of the next direction I wanted to take. We've got a few minutes before we move to audience questions, and I actually wanted to explore something off of what you just said, which is I think one of the roles that social purpose and social enterprise organizations like all of yours end up playing is a kind of bridging role between some kind of social impact and another sector, whether that sector is kind of institutional, government, schools, or the broader business sector. So I guess my question is kind of about scale. For one, is where are there opportunities to scale up the kind of ideas we're talking to here, and where do you see opportunities from other sectors to do this kind of work? And so maybe Viviana, over to you first, because I think your model is trying to position in an interesting way at a slightly different scale than exists right now. So what does scaling look like in the dream world for you, and where are those opportunities?
Yeah, so we're starting, pilot project, residents, replicating, occupying different spaces across the city where, there's more business, restaurants or other, food or organics generators. And it's gonna depend a lot of work with the city, starting with the land use where we can do this type of work. Regulations, I think that organic separation must be mandatory. So this can really work. From the conversations I've had with Phil Coates from Island Compost, the commercial business, the commercial composting operation, he says that a lot of people start, but then when it's like, oh, yucky, they stop. So that makes it's a high risk for the business. So I think that mandatory compost or separation of organics will help the business maintain, and that will come from the city. The province has been considering mandatory organics or separation of organics for a few years. And then I've learned from other cities, especially in the States, regulations, transporting waste, for instance. And for these small programs, it's usually biking or biking is when it starts it's a bigger program. Right now, for instance, we're thinking that people are going to drop off their organics in the composting bins that we're going to have somewhere in downtown. But if this grows and there's a need to pick up, then the biking is the usual way, and then that's transportation. So there's certain regulations for transportation of waste. They need to be adjusted to the small scale composting. They cannot be the same ones for, garbage companies, waste collection, GFL, or things like that. I guess it's gonna be slow. We'll start this one pilot project. We'll be working with Stella Circle, so hopefully, they will be like the ones in adopting this one. I'll be there as a consultant, and this is where I bring my consulting to, because I've been getting a lot of training in zero waste consulting, investing a lot of time and energy because I want to see this happening. So I also want to be there, coordinated, helping with the city and the different organizations that will be implementing community composting.
That is a really interesting path to scale, and I think it is important to recognize the time involved in these kind of things. And I think one other thing you flagged, Viviana, that really reminded me of something is just this conversation around how our regulatory systems are not often set up to enable this kind of small scale, quirky models that a lot of us are trying to work through. And I think that's something we hear a lot of at Food First, talking to folks doing grassroots food work, whether those are producers or secondary processors, just ways in which they run into regulatory barriers, or just regulatory surprises, or regulators being surprised because you're trying to do something that maybe hasn't been done in this province before, for example. And so I think all of you probably have bumped into that from time to time. Emily, I'm going to throw maybe, let's go to Emily first and then Pam, if that's okay. Maybe Emily, I was thinking with SucSeed, you've had a fair amount of your work has been in procurement partnerships with other sort of sectors. So I wonder, like, what does that look like? What are the opportunities for scaling, and how did you build up some of those relationships? Would be the question.
Definitely. So you hit the nail on the head. Partnerships have been a huge thing. Our earliest one was with Choices for Youth. So for us, we designed a hydroponic garden that the initial prototype was made of Velcro, pressed plastic bags, and duct tape. So a true prototype, but worked with the Department of Engineering to kind of create more of a finished product that someone would be fine to put into their house, but we didn't have a way to produce it. So we looked at injection molding, which was really expensive, and a lot of expensive options, but nothing fit. And it was a conversation just trying to solve problems of how we could get these produced, that we realized, okay, we have a simple product right here that we could produce ourselves, and we wanted to find a way that we could give back and work with the community. And then happened to be at a meeting with someone from Choices for Youth, and then they started talking about the construction program that they had been running and how they had lots of youth that had been working with power tools and doing a lot of this work. So we pitched them, okay, do you think we could make 100 of these over the next year? That turned into 500, and now it's turned into almost 3,500 gardens going out. But it was having those initial conversations of what can we do? Who can offer those types of skills and needs that we need to have addressed? And then a similar thing happened for us with Stella Circle. So we had an opportunity to get a little bit of funding to look into the growth mediums and the lights that we were using, and if there was a better or more efficient item that we could be using. So we looked at the skills that we had on our team. No one had a strong biology background or kind of had the resources to be able to run some of these studies. So a conversation that we had with Rob from Stella Circle, we said, okay, is there a way we could do something together? And then they ended up being kind of our R&D, we call it our grow lab. So they worked with their clientele. They had just gone through horticultural therapy training. So they had those skills and resources that we needed, but it was in, I guess, not the traditional place that you'd go to have research done. So for us, partnerships have been huge and have been in a couple of different sectors. We partnered with Smiling Land Farm to help get our production numbers up in terms of the space that we had for actually growing. But it all comes from kind of talking about the problems and the challenges that you're facing, being honest about them, and knowing when you need to bring other people in to help and support, and then being collaborative as a community. SucSeed's, there may only be 7 of us that are working at SucSeed, but there's probably anywhere between 50 or 100 people that we're working with through partnerships or support. And that's how you build social enterprises. It's all of us coming together, and it's doing these things in partnership.
Viviana, I see you have a hand up. Did you want to add something on that one? And then I'll go to Pam. You're also muted.
Ignore that. Very, very briefly, because Emily again reminded me that I also want to acknowledge Memorial University. So Rob is here too. Yeah. So he's a marketing student working with me this winter. And even though in CNA as well, they say they will publish or post the funding for industry, co-funding to hire students. I don't have any funding yet to pay people. And I still reached out and said, I don't have any funding. Can we do something else? And yes, I mean, they are willing to help. That's how I also say, okay, I'm a social enterprise because Rob is under the social enterprise department funding. So my quick message is, yeah, just reach out. Even if you think that doesn't apply to you, just go, and who knows what can happen. Yeah.
Thanks, Viviana. And over to Pam, I'm curious from where you sit in the food system, like specific to, I want to drill down a little bit on kind of institutional procurement, on buying like, or where there are opportunities to leverage money that's being spent by, whether it's, you know, the schools or government or big businesses, things like that. Do you see opportunities in the food sector from kind of where you sit to for that to drive demand?
I'm not sure what you mean by that question, Josh.
So like,
Can you clarify?
when people are buying food, basically, but like, I guess who's gonna be the one spending the money for businesses to scale, I guess is the question. Is the opportunity more on the consumer side, or is it purchases by bigger institutions, by big businesses or governments?
So, I want to go back, actually. I'm gonna regress a tiny little bit, because scaling is such a challenging thing, and I wouldn't want to sugarcoat it at all. As someone who is in an organization that scaled from 2,000 square feet to 14,000 square feet and all of the complications that came with that, my piece of advice first is give yourself time to figure out what you don't know and then move from there. Because without the solid foundation, scaling and growing and growth and all of those things can be a lot more challenging if you don't have your core mission, your core vision, your core fundamentals. And I think Viviana and Emily are really good examples of being really clear on their mission, being very clear on where they wanted to start from and grow from. And I think that's a really important step. In terms of like institutional settings and things like that, the one thing in my experience, and this still doesn't quite answer your question, Josh, and I'm not skirting it really, but community and community-led organizations, community-led social enterprise, people coming together in a social enterprise, whether officially or unofficially, can make more change than any top-down institutional type of level. I mean, all of us in community know that. We already know that. But we're seeing it, and we're seeing it more and more because we're able to connect even more and more. And things like, you know, the Social Justice Cooperative and their Moose Meat program is a beautiful example of community and social enterprise actually changing the policy they butted up against. And it is social enterprise and small business and small enterprise and community organizations that kind of toe that line between business and community, that see the social need, that see the social demands and the gaps, that are able to push back and say, this policy needs to be changed. So as an organization that is housed at a city building, we have had, you know, countless interactions with the city, with CRA, who's our neighbors, with all sorts of different government agencies. And oftentimes have been like, oh, we didn't know we couldn't do this. And have really had to negotiate and build on those relationships to be able to collectively, both from a social enterprise and community perspective, with government, whether that be city government, provincial government, or federal government, to try to change the system. And that's being done, and that's being done all the time. So social enterprise, getting back to your original question, can actually influence, kind of in a roundabout way, can influence the procurement from institutional settings, because it has the influence, and half the time we don't realize we have as much influence as we actually do have. And we have enormous influence that we can change the system. So that's my not quite answer to your question, Josh, but I think that's an important point that I really wanted to bring up.
And it actually reminds me of another piece of the farmers market story from ages ago, which is that when the St. John's Farmers Market was created way back when, there were no food inspection guidelines for farmers markets in the province. And credit where credit's due, those guidelines were collaboratively developed by the farmers market in partnership with government. And I think it's a good example of finding some creative solutions and not waiting for guidelines to be imposed. And not to say that, like, it isn't still challenging to navigate those things, but it's I think it's good to remember that when you're doing something new, it does sometimes give us the opportunity to write the rules a little bit. Well, and that's a little bit painful.
Yeah, and just as a more current example of that, when COVID hit, there were no public market guidelines for COVID. So any of the farmers markets, community markets, anything like that, there weren't any guidelines. So we didn't know what we should be doing. So we were the ones that pushed government to say, okay, we need to figure this out, because this is the impact that you're having by not letting us figure it out. And as a result of that, we got deemed an essential service. And so it was a really incredible push to be able to classify us as somebody, and not just us, but any of the markets across the province, as something that really is essential and recognizably so. And in doing so, enabled a lot of these small vendors and small entrepreneurs to continue to thrive, or at least survive, in the midst of a pandemic. So sometimes we write the policy and hand it over and say, here you go. And it's not because people don't care, it's because they've never really considered it before. And that's the impact that a lot of social enterprise and social purpose organizations can have.
And that was like a good summing up. I'd like to go to audience questions now, unless Emily, I saw your hand up there. Did you want to add something on that point before we do?
I was clapping.
Very good. The clap and the wave are so hard to tell apart, man. And I see Kim Todd had a question, so maybe we'll open the floor to Kim. And then as Sarah put it in the chat, you can feel free to raise a hand, or if you'd like to type your question into the chat and Sarah can grab them from there, that's fine too. But Kim, go for it.
Great. Thank you very much for having this. It's great. I've learned a lot. I didn't miss the first bit, but I've got an awful lot out of the bits that I've heard. On the topic of scale, I think it's a really interesting balance between scale, oh my God, we got a scale, and then sustainability. And I'm wondering if anybody has any sort of insights on that, if there's a magic algorithm or formula.
Anyone want to share their magic algorithm?
There is no magic algorithm or formula. It is expand too far, too fast, fall flat on your face, and realize what you need to do. That's my magic formula. The market is actually a pretty good example, because we are the St. John's Farmers Market. And then when we moved here and we had all this space, we wanted to do all the things. And we wanted to do all the things right away. And it was like, oh yeah, this was a bad idea to do it this way. And so we pulled back and we really refocused on doing the main thing that we do really well, and then taking tiny bites out of expanding. And that's kind of what I was referencing earlier. There is no magic algorithm. We are all fumbling and trying to figure it out.
Excellent.
Unless somebody else has one. And if you do, please let me know.
No.
Emily, Viviana, care to share your magic formulas?
Again, no magic formula. The two things that have helped me the most when you start down, I think, like an entrepreneurial or growing something journey, the book The Alchemist talks about finding almonds and that the world's going to point you in the right direction. And I was never kind of like this touchy-feely person, but that book changed my mind about it. that there is, when you're building something, energy comes around you and people come around you that help you build and help you grow. And Jess Chapman actually gave me the probably biggest and best piece of advice, but so simple. So we always talk about how we have these like gut feelings of like, oh, this feels like we're growing too fast, or like, I feel like we need to be moving big enough, but then we keep calling them gut instincts or gut thoughts because to you, you feel like you can't give stats or you can't give a full reasoning behind why you're feeling this way. There's no such thing as a gut feeling. It's your instinct. It's your subconscious that's telling you things that you need to do something differently, or you're in the right spot and you get this like calming feeling. So trust that, because it's not just a random feeling that you get. It actually, there is a psychological reason behind it that you feel a certain way. So when you are growing and scaling and building, you know the most about your company or the social opportunity or your nonprofit or your organization. You are an expert. So trust your gut, which is actually your head, on how fast and where you should be going.
And Viviana, how about you? Like, how do you think about the balance between scale and sustainability?
I don't have much experience yet. So yeah, I couldn't, but I can, I guess, in a year or so. But I'll just continue, right? Like doing, I guess, well, the pilot project is that first step where we say, you know, this is the way we can start this. And it went from, you know, wanting the city to do something to, oh, we can do it and we can help and we can, you know, start and just not wait until the city does something. But I'm working with the city, right? I'm not saying no, city, we don't need you. No, yes, we do. And they interested too. They are, which is great as well. So, you know, we'll see where we go from here.
Kim,
oh, sorry, go ahead, Pam.
you know, Kim, you can probably answer this question too, because I mean, as the you know, the soul behind Guide to the Good, I mean, you have taken that into something that was like this wonderful germinated idea and really grown it. So I mean, you should probably be the one answering this question too.
Well, I certainly think that's kind of you. And I am thinking of it for Guide to the Good, but also for the companies that Guide to the Good represents, in particular because, you know, back in the first phase of the pandemic, many companies stopped doing what they were doing the way they were doing it. And probably 2 or 3 months later, I was talking to some of these companies and they weren't particularly, you know, happy about what had happened, but their balance sheet was better than it would have been in normal times, you know, because a lot of their costs were reduced. You know, a lot of the pressure was on they as individuals versus staff. So, I mean, it wasn't probably sustainable from that perspective, but it's an interesting thing. Like there's a sweet spot of, you know, maximum benefit to the company, you know, lifestyle, financially, all those things, I think.
So we have another, there was a bit of, this isn't so much a question, but I think it's an interesting theme to pick up on. There was some conversation happening in the chat around the idea of the opportunity to establish a farming co-op for newcomers with farming experience but barriers to establishing farms, so language, access to supplies and resources, those kind of things. And so I'm curious about where we can innovate around equity and inclusion and diversity in the food system. Like, are there things that are missing right now, or things that could be stronger to diversify the group of folks who are trying to solve problems around food, and what kind of supports could be put in place, or what needs to change? I'm wondering if anyone has any thoughts on that, on what could make that hill a little bit easier to climb for folks who might not be engaged in that kind of work right now. Anyone interested in or have a thought on that? I'll pick on someone in a second.
I'll go.
Go for it, Viviana.
I hadn't thought about it, but the one advantage of small scale, you know, community composting is that training is minimum. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for people who, you know, have a neighbor from their family from Syria She's like eager to learn English. She's been here for a year, and we go with a cell phone. And I'm thinking that this project, I can bring her with me and start. She goes to ANC for English classes and stuff, but I think she needs this really immersion in the community. And I think with this project, I can provide that. And as she learns, and as yeah, just the English part, but also I don't know how much she'll be involved in the composting process, but I'm thinking that for people who don't know, who have, language barriers and are still just getting to know the community, the low tech and low needs of training are great opportunities for newcomers and with English barriers and wanting to get a job too, getting to know people and finally get a job, because that's their expectation. Well, like anybody, right? We all want to have a good job and living wage.
Pam, did you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, so I wanted to mention, in terms of, a farming co-op and things like that, while it's not the same, and I do want to just give a bit of a shout out because I know they're not here today, but the O'Brien Farm Foundation is doing their farm incubation program now. They're just starting it up. And for folks who don't have the resources or capacity to do full-scale farming, that's kind of a really interesting opportunity for people to be able to kind of dip their toe in the water of how they might be able to do things. So not specific to newcomers, but certainly an opportunity for anybody wanting to kind of get into the agricultural, biz, to be able to see if they can, find their way through it in a supported environment. So that's one piece. The other piece of it, I mean, the market is, one of the fundamental philosophies of this market is based on multiculturalism and diversity and inclusion and all of the things. And we see so many people coming here from all over the world because there are pieces of this place in terms of vendors or in terms of the food or in terms of whatever that make them feel like they are seen and make them feel like, they are included as part of the community. And Viviana kind of touched on some of my observations from a very outside the newcomer community perspective, is that a lot of folks coming here want to find their community, and not just their community and their cultural community, but want to find a place in the community that values and really celebrates the skills that they are bringing. I see so many people that come here that aren't able to transfer either officially or unofficially the skills that they have to Newfoundland. And that's a real loss and a real lost opportunity for a lot of people, both for us and for any newcomer communities. But if we could somehow leverage that, then there's a vast untapped potential of skill set and resources, and people just looking to be able to contribute to their new home. So that's definitely something that really, I think, is an opportunity waiting to happen.
I might throw over, Sarah Thompson is here from the ANC and put that in the chat. So maybe actually, Viviana, you had a quick follow-up, and then maybe over to Sarah, because I'd love to hear some more thoughts from your side. But Viviana first, go ahead.
Very quickly, that also connects with immigrants retention, because a lot of them come very difficult finding support. ANC does a great job, but it's not enough. And I've heard stories about, just immigrants who just want to leave because they can't find resources here too. And so this type of project is a way to get them involved in this too, and connected.
And Sarah, you're on mute there.
You think
there we are
by now. So just like a small correction, I used to work with the Association for New Canadians. I no longer work with the Association for New Canadians, but I have been very connected. I continue to be connected, but I was definitely very connected in work with newcomers in the food space. And I'm really glad to see this conversation happening here today. But I wanted to add something to what Pam was saying, just to sort of reiterate, and actually Viviana, around the learning the language. So I was the project manager for the food truck project at the association, and that is something that the participants have strongly indicated their language levels increased dramatically by participating in that project. And I think a lot of that has to do with they had to, you know, they're in a real life situation where they needed to use English. The other thing was they were doing something that they knew in their own culture. They knew their cultural food. They were very joyous to share that knowledge with people. So they also had that motivation there. So language level really did improve greatly. So I'm really excited about the project that's happening, the Cloud Kitchen, with the partnership with the farmers market, because I think that just looks really exciting, and it just sort of expands on what was existing with that food truck project. I think it's gonna be massive, and I'm really excited to see where that goes. On another side, I worked on a farming project with newcomers, a research project that was connecting newcomers that came from farming backgrounds to farm establishments throughout the province. And it was a really interesting project. But the reason that project came to be is because, like, it was an obvious thing to do, because the skills were there. Newcomers that come to, certainly that arrive here as refugees, in this case through the Association for New Canadians, that was the most common job skill that existed. So it makes just ultimate sense to work with a skill set that exists, a desire to grow food. They just need the support. And I really think something like a farm cooperative, and Pam, you mentioned the Brian's Farm, and I do think that that's a potential connection. But I just think there is a massive opportunity to grow a lot more food, because they're incredibly skilled at growing large production food growing, maybe not typical to the Newfoundland environment, but that's something that can be learned. I think there needs to be resources put in place to support newcomers that, you know, have these barriers, like language barriers, but also access to the resources that they will need. Like, they know where to get a tractor in Syria, they don't know how to get a tractor here. You know, if we can create a system that we're all supporting each other to grow food, I think we could grow a lot of food in this province. That's my 2 cents worth.
Thanks, Sarah.
And we already have the opportunity for, you know, not just us, but all of the different farmers markets and markets across this province, of which there are many, and growing every day. So if a farm cooperative existed, there's already a place in the marketplace for them to go to be able to actually interact with customers and not just growth. And so a lot of the pieces of the infrastructure are already existing.
Yeah. And what great food we're going to be able to all take advantage of then, right? The diverse foods. Anyway.
Am I allowed to ask a question to Pam and Sarah?
Yeah, of course you are. Go here, and it's unless anyone, we have probably about time for one more question, so I'll tee you right up, Emily. Go for it.
So looking at this kind of from the opposite side of things, so I'm involved with a farm out in Witless Bay, in which we're looking for innovative food to be growing, innovative ways that we can be growing. So coming from the agricultural side of things, where would you suggest people in the agricultural space go if they want to start working with New Canadians and bring in kind of that international flair when they have, like I said, when they have farmland and a tractor, but just need the right people to kind of bring in?
Sorry, I'm not quite following, Emily. So there's a space. You're saying that there is a space, a farm in Witless Bay, and yeah. And what are you suggesting?
So my question is, I guess, coming from the agricultural side of things, if someone was interested in working with New Canadians and growing more traditionally appropriate food for them, where would you suggest that they reach out to start to build those partnerships from the other side as well?
Well, the obvious one that comes to my mind is go to the ANC and talk to the newcomers. And you know, I've done that in the past. Now I was staff at the ANC, but I surveyed the whole school of adults there and to find out what is it that you're missing, like what are some ingredients that you'd love to see. They want to talk about food. I mean, we all know how important food culturally is to us. It is to everyone around the world. So an opportunity, if somebody's interested in knowing that, people are going to be very happy to share that information. And also the farmers market obviously is a tremendous resource now that you've done that research, right?
Yeah, so you know, we have all of that, the cultural food ingredients that are the gaps and things like that. But even more than that, Emily, if you're looking for people, you know, you have behind you the collective food network of the city to put it out through their own channels. And I think that's one of the strengths of this city and this province right now, is that there's a lot of interconnection between the food organizations, the food enterprises, the food resources, all of those things. You know, you've got the Food Policy Council, you've got Food First, you've got us. If you want people, it's just a matter of you know, we put it out into the world and we find out who wants to be a part of that. But yeah, I mean, the ANC is the obvious first choice, but other than that, it doesn't have to be, you know, specific. It can just be, hey, come, you know, come talk to us. And I think with the right, I guess, introductions, that I think there will be great uptake on that.
Yeah, this is great. I love seeing like little things like this come out of these conversations, right? I think there's a bunch of good activity having in chat, by the way, including Sarah Crocker popped up the Young Farmers Forum has a land matching map, which is one tool that folks can have access to. We're very close to time here. So I think that's just a great reminder of why things like the St. John's food assessments are so useful, and food assessments in other communities, and trying to pull these threads out so that someone on this call can grab them or tell someone else about it to grab them. I'll give our panelists just a quick chance if there are kind of any final thoughts or any like last piece of advice you'd offer people who are interested in jumping into doing work in the food system, and then I'll hand over to Sarah with some closing logistics. But yeah, any final thoughts, Viviana?
No, this is very exciting. I've learned a lot actually listening to myself. Because this, you know, as I've been saying, this marriage between what I've been doing as a consultant and for businesses and what I want to do for the community with the social co-op is always like, initially I saw it as a conflict of interest actually, and now as I see, as it just makes sense that we come together and we, you know, paperwork, we'll see how that looks like. But this is amazing. Thank you so much for it. And yeah, for whoever is interested, just jump in and send emails. We're all willing to help and learn. By helping, we also learn a lot. So
yeah, I think that's a really important point, is that you can be a mentor no matter where you are on your own journey too, right? Which is, I think I'm glad that you raised that so clearly, Anna. Pam, any final thoughts from you?
My only thought, I mean, it kind of echoes Viviana, is that you're not alone in this. You know, there's so many people that are willing to listen, to help, to commiserate, you know, all of the things that that we experience on a daily basis, all the frustrations and joys and heartbreaks and all of them. If you're looking for support, if you're looking for help, if you're looking for advice, how other people have done something, you're not alone. And reach out to any of us. I'm going to get one little plug in though. The St. John's Farmers Market has their annual general meeting coming up Tuesday evening. If you are not a member and would like to be one, please contact the market and we would love to have you as part of our AGM. Thank you.
That was high speed plug-in. Well done. All right. And Emily, any final thoughts from your side? Final thoughts, last piece of advice.
My advice is make your ideas a reality, even if it's one step a week or it's one step a month. Just do it. There's people around that are going to help and support you, but the one thing that we can't ever do is make you passionate about your idea. So find something you love. The food space is an incredible space to be working on because it's one of the most important things for all of us, and especially here living on an island. So just get out there and do it, and people will support you.
Thank you. And thanks to all of you. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I have to say, personally, this has been a heavy year for all of us. And I'm really relishing the chance to have a conversation about growth and problem solving and all this kind of landscape of opportunity and excitement is really nice. It's a really great battery charge to see all this work happening. So thank you all for sharing that. And thanks to everyone on the call for being here. I'm going to hand it over briefly to Sarah Crocker to close us out with a couple of pieces about the upcoming Kickstarter and other Food First NL goings on. So Sarah, over to you.
Thanks, everyone. Learned so much and really appreciate your time on this. So thanks to all our panelists. Thank you, Josh, for handling some of that moderating so I could do some technical stuff in the background. So for everyone attending, I will send out a follow-up email with lots of resources and links that were mentioned and ways to get in touch, get to that AGM, check out the community composting stuff and follow up. And yeah, again, just like the last link to the Kickstarter is live now. If yourself or an organization you're part of would like to take part, it's going to be really fun. So on the 11th, there's a bit of a welcome for everyone who's taking part. Then one-on-one coaching, we have John Gushu from the CBC and some other like business folks to help you develop a pitch. And so it's just a 2-minute pitch. And if you'd like to learn more about that, there's also going to be a People's Choice Award. So we really encourage you to check that out, take part, and share it in your networks. So
and there's some emails in the chat, links in the chat. Thanks again, everybody, for coming. Hopefully we'll see some of your faces and some of your pitches maybe in that Kickstarter, and you'll get some sweet, sweet cash prizes. It'll be a time. So yeah, thanks again. We'll see you all in May, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.